Game critics giving Sonic games a bad rep is nothing new, and we Sonic fans are pretty much used to it by now, but out of every game critic that reviews Sonic games, I think we can all agree that IGN makes the reviews that are the most laughable. This is mainly because they're just so inconsistent. They give good Sonic games mediocre or just average reviews, and bad Sonic games great reviews. So in this video, we're going to be looking through some of IGN's most infamous Sonic reviews and seeing if they still hold up today, but newsflash, they don't. Starting with Sonic 4, which is a game that is absolutely despised by the Sonic community. Sonic 4 was marketed as a return to form for the series, and it was literally advertised as being a sequel to Sonic 3 and Knuckles, which was simply a masterpiece. Anyway, IGN gave this game an 8 out of 10. Without getting into all of the issues that Sonic 4 has, let's just say that the game does not feel like the Genesis games whatsoever. I mean, it does its best, I guess, but the controls, music, graphics, level environments, just everything feels so cheaply put together. The physics is what kills it for me, though. They do not try to emulate the Genesis games whatsoever when it comes to gameplay, which is weird because they literally ripped the same levels from those games. Breathe easy, Sonic fans, Sega got this one right. I think whoever wrote this review played Sonic 1 for 10 minutes just to get some reference material, because I mean, on the surface, Sonic 4 just looks like more Sonic 1, but trust me, it's really not. I like how the review acknowledges that, yeah, these levels are all reused, but there's new stuff to make them feel different. Oh boy, that's exciting. What new stuff did they add? A crappy minecart segment, garbage vine swinging, and just a lot of garbage gimmicks that make the game terrible. I mean, it is new, I guess. Though the art style is similar to the old Genesis game, the visuals have been upgrading for the modern day. Okay, there are multiple things wrong with this statement. The art style is not similar to the old Genesis games whatsoever. I don't even know how you can compare them. And for two, the visuals are upgraded for the modern day, I guess, but they look like trash. Sonic looking like a McDonald's toy isn't really up to 2010 standards if you ask me. Sonic the Hedgehog 4 doesn't do very much that's new. Instead, it takes a step back to a time when Sonic was awesome. Yeah, I wish it did. It doesn't really do anything new at all, that's true, but everything they added to this game is garbage. Now, this isn't anything against the writer of this review, but they've clearly never fully played any of the classic games before this. Hell, I wouldn't even be surprised if they never played a Sonic game before. Who doesn't love Sonic Freeriders? Everyone, except for IGN, of course. Honestly, Sonic Freeriders would have been a very good game if it was actually playable. Using no controller with the Kinect sounds really cool, but it just doesn't work at all. You have to calibrate it every 2 seconds, and it pretty much chooses when it wants to register your movements. This caused the reception of Sonic Freeriders to be absolutely horrendous, which is a shame because the previous games in the Sonic Rider series were good. So what's the damage here? IGN gave Sonic Freeriders a very generous 7.5 out of 10. Yeah, something isn't right here. The review itself surprisingly doesn't mention anything that the majority wouldn't agree with. However, it claims that the controls are good but just take a while to master. The thing is, the controls are not optimized well at all, and the Kinect doesn't even track your movements half the time, making mastery pretty much impossible. The review also praises the story, the track design, the music, and basically everything else, which I agree with. Sonic Freeriders would have been a very enjoyable game if you were able to use an actual controller, but it doesn't give you the option to do so, so all the good aspects of the game are just completely overshadowed by the terrible controls. Part of me feels like the praise from this review was just because the Kinect was a very hyped up thing back then, but I don't know. I wonder if the reviewer found some way to make the controls actually work decently. So I wouldn't say the review itself is entirely out of proportion, but just the final score it was given. So most of you probably don't even know what this game is because it is definitely one of the most obscure Sonic games. Sonic Pocket Adventure is your standard 2D Sonic game and it's pretty fun. The level design is good, the controls are nice, and the gameplay is fun. It's just a very solid 2D Sonic game that not many people know about because it was released on the Neo Geo Pocket Color, which is a very obscure gaming handheld. But is it the best Sonic game ever made? Yeah, IGN thinks so. Yeah, so you heard that right. Sonic Pocket Adventure is the highest rated Sonic game by IGN with a perfect 10 out of 10 score. Now, personally, I wouldn't give this game that high of a score because it does have its issues. It reuses levels from previous Sonic games, the collision is buggy, there are screen crunch issues, and the jumping is really stiff at times. But I guess IGN looked past all of that because it has a perfect score. This is another review where the review itself doesn't raise any eyebrows. The review just talks about the aspects that make the game fun and nostalgic, which I agree with. But giving this game a 10 out of 10 score? Yeah, I just can't agree with that. I would give it a solid 8 out of 10 at most. So this is probably the most infamous Sonic IGN review just because of how terrible it is. Sonic Unleashed is a very fun game and has grown to be my favorite Sonic game. The daytime stages are an absolute blast to run through and they are a good mix of high-speed platforming and reaction time. It's just so satisfying to plow through enemies, ride sleds on top of whales, and run across water while giant pillars are trying to end your life. It's fun. Now the other half of Sonic Unleashed is the Hedgehog gameplay. This is not as fun as the daytime stages, not even close. Is it downright terrible though? No, not at all. It is a bit slow and the levels could get tedious with the enemies and the length of the levels, sure, but there is definitely some fun to be had in the Hedgehog stages. I would give Sonic Unleashed a 9 out of 10 at the end of the day for its amazing story, level design, and pretty much everything the game has to offer. Call me biased all you want, but I don't really care. Now, IGN gave this game a 4.5 out of 10, which is just absolutely absurd. Starting off strong here by just outright telling the reader to not buy Sonic Unleashed. Oh boy, we're in for a treat, aren't we? Now let's give credit where credit is due. The review does bring up some valid criticisms, such as the optimization, the unnecessary filler, and the length of the Hedgehog stages. All of that I can at least somewhat agree with, because Sonic Unleashed does run like garbage on base consoles and the Hedgehog stages could last for a very long time for someone who's never played the game before. But that's pretty much it. Everything else is so incredibly bad. The review starts by praising certain aspects of the daytime stages, but then faults it for being too fast? Like what? Then the review bashes the Hedgehog gameplay, which is definitely understandable, sure, but I just don't think it deserves this much criticism. But that's just the written review. So we haven't really delved into the video reviews yet, but oh boy, this is absolutely terrible.
I have a theory when it comes to Sonic games. Someone at Sega hates the Hedgehog with all his might, and he's going about trying to sabotage the franchise with these awful games. This is the only explanation that makes any sense to me. Pretty much every decision made for this game was the wrong one, and Sonic ends up taking more beating than a piñata because of it.
So, this game did nothing right, huh? And your only explanation is that someone at Sega just hates the series? Oh boy, this is going to be good. Also, this guy clearly doesn't know how to play the game because the QuickTime event was just, oh yeah, so good. 10 out of 10.
The daytime stages are actually pretty fun. It's fast platforming that is mostly on rails, and for a brief moment you might actually think to yourself, wow, this is what a current-gen Sonic game should be.
The review actually says the daytime stages are pretty fun, but what the actual hell is this gameplay? He's not even boosting at all. In fact, he mashes the X button and short boost to destroy enemies. I feel like I'm watching a 4-year-old trying to play a Sonic game because this guy actually sucks. Hopefully none of his criticism is a result of this garbage gameplay.
Gone is the speed of Sonic replaced by a bunch of boring, brawling sections. The frame rate's bad, the camera's bad, and the fighting stuff is just tedious and terrible. As a Hedgehog, you go around beating the crap out of stuff and performing a bunch of really bad platforming sections. Oh yeah, and you have stretchy arms, cause, you know, everybody knows that werewolves have stretchy arms.
He then begins to criticize the Hedgehog gameplay, saying that it's tedious and just not fun, which I can agree with somewhat. But what the heck is this comment about Sonic's stretchy arms? Yeah, of course it doesn't make sense, cause nothing in this franchise makes sense, but go off, I guess.
However, Team Sonic didn't want to let any slip-ups happen. They had to make this game bad. So how do you make it worse? Well, first, you add completely unnecessary RPG elements.
Unnecessary RPG elements? Oh, he didn't like the upgrade system. That explains a lot. No wonder he found the Hedgehog boring and tedious because he didn't even like the upgrades. Great.
You gain XP for every bad guy you kill, and then you can spend this XP to increase things like Sonic's speed or your Hedgehog's moveset. It's not so terrible, but it does seem unnecessary. I mean, really, do I need to pay to upgrade Sonic's speed? Shouldn't Sonic be as fast as he can be from the get-go?
I don't see why progression like this is so terrible. Sonic's default speed is by no means slow, it's really fast. The upgraded speed is not a game changer in the slightest. Even the upgraded boost gauge doesn't really change much because the game constantly gives you rings and stuff. That should have been the criticism. Also, I love how he complains about Sonic's speed even though he's not even boosting. It's just amazing how little a single button press can change someone's perspective on the game.
There are hub worlds. These terrible, terrible hub worlds are where you aimlessly walk around, talk to people for no reason, and collect coins to get to the next level. Oh, and you can cleanse people's souls by...
Why is he acting like the hub worlds aren't completely optional? Yeah, you can collect stuff and talk to people if you want to, but it's not required for progression at all. I know you have to talk to Professor Pickle every now and again, but that's just a minor inconvenience. The hub worlds are only here to give the worlds a little bit of connection. They're not mandatory.
Sonic Unleashed is a classic example of what happens when a good idea isn't left alone. There's just too much fussing that's been done to this once good formula. It's kind of like...
There's one thing I do agree with though, and that is the point that Sega didn't leave a good idea of the daytime stages alone, because they just had to add something that is not nearly as fun in order to lengthen the game. But for everything else, I feel like the criticisms are the result of terrible skills, because this guy just doesn't know how to play the game. But hey, at least they gave the Wii version a decent score, that's something. Overall, IGN Sonic reviews are mostly just inconsistent, I guess you could say. Some of them are good, some of them are bad, and some of them are just, what? How is that even possible? But yeah. That's what we're going to go ahead and end off for today's video, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed. So thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all later. Goodbye.